So a few people have been asking me about the Surfing MP and an evening of firsts. I can indeed confirm that this episode's crew for Crest in partnership with Elusive, namely Producer Dodd and myself, did just meet, wax up and go for a session with someone who only a day ago was strutting the corridors of power in the House of Commons. Yet Producer Dodd is actually going to join us a little bit at the presenter's chair for this one because he is a bit of a politics geek and a bit of a Marxist, a dyed-in-the-wool Marxist, isn't that right?
Absolutely.
Yeah. Anyway, fun surf we just had, wasn't it?
If you like shoulder high onshore slot, yeah.
1, 2, 3, 4.
You remember last time we had question time, or Crestian time as it got dubbed, the jock versus purist debate? Well, that escalated rather quickly. After dispatching Logan Nicol and I, albeit with the help of some dubious judging from Bridge Lawrence, Producer Dodd has decided that Crest in partnership with Elusive is moving up in the world as far as debating goes. Yes, ladies and gentlemen, we had our first Olympic medalist earlier this series, and now it's time to welcome to the Garden Studio our first MP. No, you did hear that right the first time. MP, as in Member of Parliament. We love an interesting profession episode, and perhaps there isn't a job you'd imagine as being further from beach culture than Member of Parliament.
But think again, you'd be wrong. Yes, for several decades, Wales has had a surfing MP. Perhaps this is just the one we know about.
How do you balance that job with sandy toes then? And does it influence your views on the stuff that matters? We'll talk the ocean, lifestyle, and of course debate a few key policies from a surfer's perspective.
Yes, it's true, Crest is going serious. Kind of.
Yes, our guest this week is none other than the Tory Tornado, or at least his white-collar boxing name was that. It's the Right Honourable David TC Davies MP. Welcome to the show, Dave.
Lovely to see you.
So, Dave TC Davies, the Right Honourable Dave TC Davies. Is it Right Honourable or Honourable?
It's only honourable, I'm afraid.
Only honourable.
Yeah, you've got to go up a level to get the right.
Do you get to wrong honourable eventually?
Some people would say we're all there already, but...
Yeah, welcome, Dave, to Crest in partnership with Elusive.
Great to be here.
So how do you balance a job like that with sandy toes then? And does it influence your views on the stuff that matters?
I don't think it influences things, but it's a bit tricky logistically because obviously I'm in London 4 days a week, so I'm out about once a week now, which isn't ideal, but still, it's quite possible quite manageable really. Yeah. Been coming down here for a lot longer than I've been an MP for.
Yeah.
And hopefully we'll keep coming.
Oh, great. Yeah, we will be talking ocean, lifestyle, and of course debate a few key policies from a surfer's perspective.
Well, Crest is Crest going serious or is it kind of?
Well, let's see.
Let's pretend.
Times are good, summer's here, and stuff is starting to open. We're hoping a little bit later to bring in somebody from the Bridgend Youth Council, Mack. Now, Mack has got to finish his shift in the high tide verse, so we're listening out through the garden studio for the sound of his wheels, or rather his mother's wheels outside. He might get you before we finish recording. Who knows? We're in the Crest garden studio. I am starting to feel a little bit like Fiona Bruce now. Anyway, the sensibly spread... The sensibly spread studio audience is here. Wales's beach communities coming further out of lockdown. So can you promise us that the direction of travel is now set, Dave, as the government finally got this in hand?
Well, obviously in Wales it's down to the Welsh government.
Yeah.
More or less they've followed what the UK government have done. I wouldn't want to promise anything, but yeah, the direction of travel is to lift lockdown rules. Whether that happens next week, or whether we'll have an announcement on Monday from the UK government, which may or may not be followed in Wales. So I think the direction of travel is set, but the speed of travel is not set in stone.
Right. Okay. Yeah.
Fair enough. And obviously, you consider the vaccine rollout was only possible because of Brexit, wasn't it?
Well, it was. I mean, we would be roughly where Germany and France are if we'd stayed in the European Medicine Agency. So I don't think anyone can really argue with that one. But go on.
Yeah,
go
a
on,
little bit later in
argue
the
it.
show, we're going to have a little political chat.
I know there would have been potentially ways we could have sorted our own vaccine, but nobody else in the European Union managed it. So
Yeah, okay.
I'll stand by that one.
Well, we'll start and we'll also end though with the one thing that we do have in common here, and that's surf. So how and why did you get into that in the first place, Dave?
Well, I got into that in 1989 when I was working in Australia for a year. And I ended up in Surfers Paradise, but sadly didn't spend enough time surfing because I was working in a nightclub.
In Surfers Paradise?
Yeah,
oh, wow.
yeah, it was a tough job.
That is pretty much
to be 19 again.
That's the official business of Surfers Paradise, pretty much, isn't it? Nightclubs. And
Yes, it was a good time. Obviously, I did think I was going to have a go at it. I got just about as far as really riding whitewater on a big mini mal or something, and then came back and thought that was that, and then suddenly discovered, well, there's surfing just down the road from where I live in Newport at the time.
Yeah.
So started coming out and actually met some guys from Newport. And used to come out with a bloke I worked with actually called Stephen Harding, who sadly passed away recently. He's quite well known around. He was one of the early pioneers of surfing.
Newport was the kind of hub of fourth cool surfing in the first place when there wasn't really a town here, you know. In the 70s,
well, back in the
80s.
70s, I think Engel was quite well known, and people still mention his name now. He was a very good surfer. As I say, sadly he passed away, but he used to take me down here and other spots as well.
Yeah.
So it was good times.
Wow. And then in during a surfing life, have you know, I can confirm for the listener, you know, we're talking about someone who's a proper surfer. I've been surfing with Dave quite a few times over the last few years, and you know, you can surf, you know, which I do find
Not
all
as
the
well
more
as you can, that's for certain.
It's very kind of you, just softening us up later before the pod. No, have you done a lot of travel then? You know, with your.
I
in your
did
surfing
earlier,
life?
yes. I mean, I was lucky because I worked. So came back, worked in Newport for a while, and then I thought I wanted to do the same thing again. So I wanted to go to New Zealand,
Right.
and just work over there and via Asia.
Yeah.
And I spent 6 months doing this sort of whole Indonesia thing.
lovely.
In Sri Lanka, absolutely amazing.
Yeah.
Actually, I got quite ill at the end of this, and I must admit, I remember lying fairly ill in bed and thinking, hang on a minute, I could actually be better off. I was dreaming of warm beer, pubs, the lads, and thinking, Porthcawl, Lantern Major, people may make fun, but actually you can be out there every day and you know, can have a good time. So I came back. I never really went off.
We've
again.
got all the time in the world for talking about how great a place
Well,
Wales
it's a
is
great
to surf,
place.
Yeah.
I don't want to talk too much in case we encourage too many more people to come down here. Actually, at the moment.
You surf Rest Bay quite a lot.
Yeah.
We see you in Rest Bay. Where else do you go surfing regularly?
Lantern Major was always my break. Actually, in the 90s, I always surfed the point there. That was, in fact, I surfed that a lot more than Rest.
When you say the point now, do you mean the like the A-frame peak to the, because they got weird nomenclature down there, haven't they? They call it the right, they call it the left.
Okay, I mean the right-hand wave that breaks on the left-hand side.
Right, yeah.
And I don't actually surf the left very much, which
they
would
call
be more natural for me.
So they call that the peak, don't they? I think I haven't got a clue.
Well, I know where it is. And,
they're a strange breed down there.
Oh, well, I'm not knocking under it. I've been there many times, but I never got to know anyone in Lantic, whereas I always did in Porthcawl.
Oh, well, we got a lot of listeners in Lantic.
All right, I'm sure they're a lovely crowd in Lantic.
One of our most regular guests is the king of Lantwit, isn't he?
King, yeah, I don't know. Well, he's talking about somebody called Mark Vaughan. Let's not stroke his ego anymore.
Not to offend anyone in Lantic. It is a great wave on its day.
And are you a consumer of surf media at all? You know, do you follow? You know, have you got favourite surfers or favourite surf movies or things like that?
Obviously, apart from yourself, Tom. No, I used to, but not really now.
Yeah.
No, I don't buy any of the mag. I'm sure nobody. Do they produce the magazines these days?
They do, yeah. So you can still get surf mags, yeah. A lot of them have got sort of online presences now as well, yeah.
No, not really, no.
Yeah.
But I put the films on for the kids.
Yeah.
But I've still got the old ones that I had back in the 90s.
So do you have have you had influences on your style as a surfer, or is it more sort of who's in the lineup with you?
I think it's more a case of the board, and at the moment I'm on a mini mal, or what I call a fat boy, if I'm allowed to call it that these days. That doesn't offend anyone.
I saw the board you were on earlier. They call it mid-length now. That's the new word for it. Yeah.
A fun stick, flow stick. It's called.
How
It's a
long
lovely
is
board. It's 7 foot, so it is a bit smaller than.
I should have asked that
mini
before I got on it, really, shouldn't I?
Yeah. It's a lovely board. It catches everything.
Yeah.
It's a bit hard to paddle out on a big day. But my nephew, who was actually brought up in France, he's half French, and went to university in Swansea and then trained to become a carpenter, is now in business shaping surfboards. So I'm plugging him, by the way.
No, that's fine. Because he's going to plug away.
He's it's called Magic Poison, I think his company is, and he's got a workshop in Portugal. He's shaping boards. He knows his stuff. He's a very good surfer, and he's shaping me a 7-foot fish.
Nice.
So
where else in Portugal?
Don't know, but it's not. It's somewhere down in the south, Sagres way, I think.
Oh, okay.
He's in a little village down there, living the dream.
Yeah, well, we've surfed Sagres a few times, haven't we?
We have. We've got listeners down there too. Yeah.
So, balancing like Westminster with surfing, is it just one of those things on a Friday evening? Get home, get in the water. Yeah,
we get back on a Thursday night normally, but then Friday's quite a busy day doing the constituency work, because the MP's job, I would say, is two roles. One is the political one, which you tend to see in the media, where you in Parliament itself, and then the other side of it is more the constituency side, where you're holding surgeries or visiting things, visiting businesses, talking to people in the area. So you do that on the Friday or Saturday morning. So you should get one day off, and that I tend to only get out once a week. These days.
You're always like going surfing on the way back from the Commons, then, are you?
Well, it's a weekend. It's a weekend activity for me now. I can't get out in the week. So if you have the perfect swell arrives on Wednesday, I'm lost. Obviously over the recess periods though, there's a bit more flexibility. So I'm not saying I've not been spotted down here the day.
But you've not like popped in for a quick surf and then had a sinus drain in the House of Commons.
I haven't done that, but I've popped in for a quick surf and then gone off and done TV interviews and had that. Yeah. I've been outside Corum's shop trying to get changed into a pinstripe suit or something with a few odd looks coming my way out there. But luckily we go back quite a long way, so he's all right about it.
Have you ever been tempted to purchase wax on expenses?
Oh.
Hey, come on, you can admit this now. It's nowhere near as dodgy as Chris Graylin's fat.
Never mess with expenses. You've got to follow the expenses rules to the letter. And then when you finish doing that,
we did check. To be fair, you were one of the better ones.
You can imagine that. It would be the mirror would have in for you, and you can imagine the mirror if you bought a bar of sex wax quick humps.
It wouldn't be a good look. It wouldn't be a good look at all. You've got to think. I always say, don't just think about the rules. Think about what the Daily Mail will make of it.
Right, and then what about this one? Surely you must have been tempted to get an office staffer to give you a magic seaweed report sometimes,
Oh no, I've got it on my phone. I don't need that. I don't need that. It's on there all the time.
Right. Well, one of
my office staffer is too interested in football. She's out there. I'm not sure if I should admit that. She's out there at the moment.
Oh right. Following who? In Baku.
Well, Wales. So she.
Great. Yeah.
Yeah.
Again, obviously, for the listener, this will be coming out a little bit later. Yeah. At the time of speaking, Wales are in Baku. And we're hoping that by the time you're listening to this, listeners, they might have gone a bit further than Baku. And there's a lot going on in sport as well as the country opens up. We were waiting for the less important cricket score of England versus New Zealand, and the more important cricket score of Pontier away at Sully to find out how Rob's bowling is going on. I did hear.
Yeah, well, it was whether Rob could attend or not. It depended on how well his bowling went, didn't it? And we decided not to chance it in the end. So.
Yeah. One of our former guests, Cynthia Sosdian, she's an academic. She's actually got the tides sitting in her online work, in a computerized work calendar. So whenever she's making a meeting, she's Lantwick based, so she knows avoid a meeting at the wrong stage of the tide. Yeah. And then she reduces her chances of sort of not being able to go for a surf.
I don't think I'll get away with that.
Yeah.
To be honest, I'll ask the Prime Minister next time I'm talking to him if he'd mind me rearranging.
There's a photo of him swimming in the sea at Cornwall at the time of the recording.
I think he's a bit of a swimmer. Well, I think Matt Hancock has taken up surfing.
Has he?
Yes.
I was going to ask you that.
I don't know if that's a secret, but I have seen a picture of him standing on a foamy.
Really? Wow.
Yeah, he's probably going to have a lot of time in his hands before long, isn't
he? It must be a world away from the beach, though. Can I ask, what is it actually like in the House of Commons when it's packed out during a debate? Does it compare to the shore break at High Tide Rest Bay on a busy summer day?
Well, you may laugh, but it's not dissimilar because. If you're actually speaking in the House of Commons, my slot actually for Welsh questions, because I'm a junior minister in the Wales office.
Right.
So my slot comes just before Prime Minister's questions on a Wednesday.
Right.
And people come in when not now, obviously because of COVID, but when we're sort of normally sitting,
Yeah.
people will pile in. They're not really interested in the Wales office. They're interested in the Prime Minister. So they get louder and
Right.
louder, more and more aggressive. The moment's ticking away. It's getting up to 12 o'clock. They really want it. And so there's shouting, there's hollering, there's catcalling. You're getting up there and they're basically shouting, "Who the hell are you? Get off. Let's get the
are they?
2 prize fighters on. You're the under."
Do you feel like the support band?
Yeah, you are the support man. I mean, that's a fair analogy. So then you get the adrenaline because if you get it right,
Yeah.
it's going to feel good. If you
Yeah.
get your point across, if you land it properly. If you get it wrong, it's not a good
Yeah.
feeling. If you run out of things to say, you're going to have 350 people opposite you shouting, yelling, laughing,
Right.
and making your life a complete misery. So you got to
It's
get that
more-
right.
It's more like you make it sound like it's actually more like stand-up comedy. Obviously, it's not comedic, but that sort of heckle, you got to keep the hecklers at bay, kind of thing.
I think it's more like verbal boxing.
Right.
It's great when it goes well.
Yeah.
Horrible if it goes
Because obviously
wrong.
you're a bit of a boxing fan, aren't you? So.
I was, yeah. I'm not doing it now, but I was big,
No,
big fan.
I gave
big
up
fan.
about 5 years ago.
Yeah.
As well.
Yeah, you get there gets to a point where you don't really want to be hit anymore.
Yeah.
The I was going to say about with regard to that being in the House of Commons. A friend of ours, Harry Cromwell, who was on the show a couple of episodes ago, had a heat in the world in the ISA Worlds the other day in El Salvador, and the heat after him was Gabriel Medina, the sort of the current world number 1 at the time of recording. And we were saying a very similar thing when Harry was catching his last wave or two in the heat. We were saying, people are now logging in to watch Gabriel Medina, and they're kind of waiting for Harry's heat to be over. But on top of that, Gabriel Medina is sitting on the beach doing his warm-ups and drinking his water and watching the lineup and watching what Harry's doing on the waves. And I don't know, hopefully not thinking, well, I'd be doing that instead,
But you're right, though, even like the commentary team, 5 minutes before the end of the heat, had already started, like the camera had started to go onto Medina, and the commentary team were talking about Medina doing his warm-ups and only giving Harry a kind of cursory thing, weren't they?
That's a lot of pressure, isn't it?
Yeah.
Whatever your discipline is, whether it's speaking in the chamber or performing in the waves.
But is it quite a sport in the first job I ever had, I dealt with barristers quite a bit, and I would see barristers go for each other and really go for each other, and I had to go in court a few times and quizzed by barristers as part of my job. And they'd sort of do anything. They'd try and get people on contempt of court, or they'd try and catch procedures and sort of really challenge each other's careers. And then they'd be having a drink together, halfway through, and sort of laughing and joking about it. And then they'd be back in and at each other. Does that kind of
Yeah, it's a
happen,
lot
or
like
are
that.
there real enemies that you don't want to talk to?
Oh,
after the
there are real enemies, but they're as likely to be on your own side as the other side. And
Right.
there are a lot of people who you go and have a drink with afterwards. You could be tearing each other apart in the chamber, and then afterwards go off and have a cup of tea. I mean, Peter Law was like that, the old Labour MP.
Right,
Lovely
yeah.
guy. I mean, he'd tear strips at me, and I'd have a go back in the Welsh Assembly. I wasn't as good as he was. He was very, very good at what he did.
Right.
Sadly passed away now, and he'd come out afterwards and he'd be chuckling. He said, "Come on, I'll buy you a cup of tea, boy." Honestly,
But
it was
like
great.
he's just taught you a lesson.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, come on now then. Yeah, no hard
Again,
feelings.
like the white collar boxing or something.
Well, it was before all that, but it was very good. I remember him well because he was minister, I think, local government in the Welsh Assembly. I used to write to him every week. I want this, I want that. Peter, Minister Law, I demand you build a bypass. And he had me in once. He said, "Right, come on in and see me officially and make your case." So I went in there and I sort of started off on a bypass. I didn't know, he said, that cost too much. Went to something else, underpass, cost too much. And in the end, I said, well, I need a brown tourist sign near Abergavenny. He looked at the officials, he said, give the boy his tourist sign. And I said, well, we can't just do that, Minister. And he said, listen, give the boy his tourist sign. He can't have anything else, but you can give him the sign. And sure enough, a few weeks later, the sign went up. So
Wow.
good man.
And it's stuff that people care immensely about, some of the things that you affect or or disaffect. And I'm wondering if you've ever had trouble with the sort of general public. And we're bringing this round to surfing. Have you ever you've been heckled in the lineup, or had someone sort of shout at you in a car park or anything because they don't agree with something you've done?
No, never. In fact, I never thought I was getting recognised, but I realised I was a bit in Porthcawl. It surprised me because I would expect to be recognised a bit in Monmouthshire,
Right.
but I wouldn't necessarily expect it to go beyond that.
Yeah.
But I think because, and as you know, I'm a Welsh speaker, so I suppose I'm one of the few Conservatives who appears on the news programme, so I do get sometimes recognised. But no, I've never had a problem in Porthcawl. Never.
Right, okay.
No, I've had Todd bending my ear, of course, in the shop.
Yeah.
Big
Todd
Labour
Murray,
man.
yeah.
But, you know, apart from that, I mean, I don't mean that in the nicest way. Of course, he's a great guy.
Yeah. How this is actually interesting. Actually, how do you cope with using social media as an MP? Because I bet that's really horrible.
Oh,
It
stop
can be pretty
doing
horrible,
it.
can't it?
Stop doing it, basically. I'll put out stuff. I mean, I hate Twitter. I am on Twitter.
Yeah, no.
But I don't look at it.
Crest podcast follows you on Twitter.
Well, that's very kind of you. But I've got to tell you, my wife said to me, I was getting into rows with people in the middle of that. She said, get it off the phone. Either that goes off the phone or I'm going.
Wow.
So it's off the phone because basically you put something out there, no matter how mundane or harmless it is, a whole load of people pile in. Well, what's the point? I said, well, I'll put out stuff, the press releases and the rest of it. Those who want it can pick it up. I'm not getting in.
But you don't.
I'm
so
not
you
engaging.
don't ever delve into the comments anymore. That's you
Waste
cut
of
that out,
time.
don't you?
Waste of time.
Yeah, because some of the MPs get absolutely crucified.
Well, I do as well, but I don't see it anymore. So I mean, good luck if you're one of my Twitter trolls. Well, good luck to you. You're wasting your time as far as I'm concerned because I don't look at it.
Fair enough.
Yeah.
Another question I wanted to ask, actually, as well, relates to you mentioned before about going skateboarding.
Yeah.
And didn't you say you also go skateboarding?
No, you mustn't say this online.
Oh, right.
No, well, you can. All right, I now have to confess something that has never been spoken of publicly. But during the lockdown, obviously, I couldn't go surfing at all.
Yeah. So you got a balance board or something? Do you? Or
I bought one of those
cardboard?
surf skates,
Yeah.
Carver. I bought a cheap version actually,
Right.
the D Street, and once I sort of got going on it, it is what they say. You shut your eyes and imagine you're surfing and pump it a bit, and it works.
Yeah.
It's not actually a skateboard. I mean, you would know the difference. Most of your listeners would know the difference and instantly say that's not a skateboard at all.
Right.
But I suppose if you weren't a skateboarder, you'd probably think it was.
Right.
And it's really good.
Yeah.
I mean, it's great exercise. So at 50, I mean, I've been sneaking down to the skate park occasionally and having a blast with it, and it's absolutely fantastic. Good. I don't know whether you've had a go or. I mean, you've got it in the back of the car. I can give you a quick demo on the road if you want.
We'll have a quick blast after
Have a quick go.
this,
Yeah.
Now, let's talk a little bit about politics then, right? It's fair to say that you would be on what would generally be considered the right of UK politics if we drew a political compass.
Yeah.
So what draws you to this? Is there a kind of philosophy that underpins your convictions?
I think there is. It's about minimising government interference in people's lives.
Right.
That would be the overriding philosophy behind it. But I think that conservative politics tends to be about pragmatism rather than having a set plan that you try and follow come what may.
Yeah.
So for example, as we've seen during lockdown, we as a party tend to favour low tax, low government intervention.
Right.
But clearly, the pandemic's come along. This requires a different response. So we're not going to sit there saying, well, our template is this, so we're going to have to stick to it. Actually, the correct response was to have huge government intervention and spend a load of money. That was the correct thing to do, given the circumstances. So I like to think of, and I think conservative politics is pragmatic. It's hard to pin down because it will be, it's not about building a socialist utopia based on Karl Marx or anything else like that. It is about having a fairly pragmatic view as to the right thing to do.
Okay. And that's, you're talking about home, how to run the country at home, this country. I've always thought that travel to poorer countries is a real eye-opener.
Yes.
And I think that lots of surfers often then get pulled left, or at least in favour of international aid or supporting international development once they've travelled. El Salvador, we just mentioned, having hosted the World Games and having hosted it with aplomb, it's a country which has earmarked its surf culture as one of the cornerstones of its plan to come out of poverty after the terrible civil war, in the 70s and 80s. I went to El Tunco where the contest was in 2006, and it was a pretty torrid place, with plastic bags floating on down the river. El Salvador is a country which has benefited from 2 aid programs recently, one of which is the Sustainable Manufacturing and Environmental Pollution Program, which is about reducing plastics pollution. The other one is global health research. And if you look at what El Tunco is like now, from what I've heard from Harry and from what I've seen on on the coverage, it's a far more salubrious area. So there's a country that seems to have really benefited there. So in that context, is it sort of right that some of these programs are now facing cuts?
Well, we're still spending 10 billion a year on foreign aid. So that's a significant amount of money. It's more than virtually any other country in the world. I couldn't tell you which projects are being cut at the moment and which ones are working.
No,
which
I
aren't.
couldn't tell you if that one in El
but-
Salvador is or not. I couldn't either, no.
But you know, some are, no doubt about it. I would want to see the ones. There are some which I think would be ripe for cutting.
Yeah.
It's hard to justify the fact that we're borrowing a large sum of money, much more than 10 billion a year. So you could say that all of the foreign aid we're spending at the moment is borrowed money.
Right.
That's the first thing. Secondly, we have not drastically reduced foreign aid. We brought it down from 0.7% of GDP to 0.5% in recognition of the fact that we've had to spend vast sums of money in this country. And I'd like to throw out a little criticism, since we're talking politics, of some on the left who've spent the last couple of years saying that Britain is a country full of people who are starving. I mean, I hear it all the time. People are not starving. You recognise, as I do, we've all travelled in the third world. There is no comparison between living standards in the third world and the UK. And therefore, it's pretty irresponsible for some in the church, for example, to have spent the last 2 years suggesting that there is a comparison, and then being surprised when the public is saying to us, as they're saying to me, and I get a lot of emails saying, cut all foreign aid. Why should we be spending any money abroad when people are starving in this country? So I think some on the left have got a little bit of soul searching to do, because that line that they have pushed, which is totally exaggerated, has fed directly into this push to cancel all foreign aid, which is not what we're doing.
And that's interesting. I find that an entirely valid point to say that Britain does not look anything like some of the things you see when you travel. And one example that I found particularly harrowing in my life of travel was when I went to Peru. Peru's just had 4 out of 4 qualifications for the Olympics. They've spent 10 plus million on a surfing development centre. And in fact, what I found interesting when I stayed in Miraflores, which is very near to the home of the first ever World Surfing Games in 1965, won by Felipe Pomar, it wasn't so much the sort of the poverty was a real thing in Peru. You know, like a toothache will stay with you forever there. You know, and you know, something that might be solved with antibiotics here could mean death in some areas of Peru. But one of the things that I found particularly stark was the contrast between rich and poor in Peru. So Miraflores felt like, you know, the King's Road in Chelsea or something. And I kind of almost found myself wondering whether a country that hadn't yet taken care of its poor had the right to kind of have such opulence also within it at the same time. And so I wonder whether perhaps what some of the left are motivated by is to kind of, we used the phrase direction of travel earlier, is to keep that direction of travel from... further growing the gap between rich and poor in the UK.
The gap is continuing to grow. Like you probably know as well as I do that the UK has got one of the largest wealth gaps in Europe by most measures. By most metrics you measure it by, and that's actually been growing, isn't it? Which probably does lead to the resentment which people have.
Well, first, I mean, there's two big points here on the issue of Peru, right? First of all, I haven't been there, but I've been to. Sri Lanka. Sri Lanka's got similar
of course,
setup,
you go through Negombo and then you're down in,
And what is going to make those countries better off? What is more likely to increase living standards overall and sustainably? Is people like us going there, travelling there, going on holiday there, spending hard currency in those countries.
Absolutely,
that's more likely to work, to be honest, I think, than an aid programme. Right. So that's the first thing, and you know, us being able to go over there and encouraging other people to go over there is a good thing. Even if we're staying in a nice, comfortable hotel, we're employing people locally. There's money going into the economy, hard currencies. So that's the first thing. Then coming back to the UK, of course there is a difference, but you do have to look at the way this is calculated. So we calculate poverty based on a metric, which is anyone who's earning less than 60%. Of the median income. That's how poverty is calculated. So basically, you know, even if we had a country full of millionaires, or everyone was earning, you know, huge salaries, there would still be poverty because there'd be some people who are multi-millionaires. So it's not actual poverty. We're not talking about people living as they do in Peru in you know, places, shanty towns with no water, electricity, or whatever. what we're just talking about is not quite as wealthy as some of the other people. But if we encourage
genuinely
people
struggling to feed their
of course
families
there
in
are.
the UK,
Of course there are. No doubt about that.
Not like Peru, though. I'll tell
No,
you.
That's the point.
I spent lots
That's
of
the
time in
point.
Kenya, so I know.
Yeah,
that.
exactly. I mean, that's the point I make. I absolutely
We
acknowledge that.
promised that we'll keep it as relevant as we
yeah.
can to surfing. And so I just wanted to say as well, something Producer Dodd and I were saying when we were preparing for this, is we find the whipping system in Westminster a fascinating idea, where you're told, right, you've got to vote this way. And again, to make it relevant to surfing, I think there are many ways in which surf culture has kind of allied itself to ideas of freedom. If you think about the iconic movies and their names, free ride, free form, the idea of getting your toes into the sand, walking off the edge of civilization. Now, maybe this is a very selfish thing for me to say, right? But still,
What's coming now?
For better or for worse, the traditions of the sport seem to encourage and exalt the idea of kind of doing your own thing. So to me, the thought of having to sort of toe a party line seems like complete anathema to everything I grew up believing. Do you ever find yourself voting against personal beliefs? And if so, how do you bring yourself to do it?
Well, I am one of the whips now, so I'm one of the ones responsible
Right,
for this.
you. Putting everyone in line.
Let me see if I can bring in a surfing analogy, because obviously, if you go off and surf Scare on a quiet day in winter, you can absolutely do your own thing.
Right.
But supposing you're surfing Rest Bay in the height of summer,
Yeah.
Like
you've still got it but on a really nice day, not like what we did now, because nobody really cared. But then you'd have to obey the drop-in rule, wouldn't you?
Yeah, of course.
So you couldn't quite go off and do your own thing. You
Yeah.
still have. There are still rules there which we all have to sort of follow. I don't know if that's a very good analogy or not.
Oh, here we go. This is Mack from the
Hi, Mack.
Bridgend Youth Council arriving. Right, hang where you
Councillor.
are now, Mack. Right, we're going to get you sat down in a socially distanced manner in a second. We're just going to fire.
So that's my answer, really.
Yeah.
We all still have responsibilities, even when we're out in the water. We're still, and frankly, if people want to stand as independents, good luck to them. Then they can do their own thing. If they want to stand as Conservative or Labour,
There is a bit of.
then they will have to.
I think there is a bit of a whipping system in surfing. You just made me realise when we talk about that, because if we're surfing out at the point here, I probably do take a bit of responsibility for making sure that turn-taking system...
you're the chief whip.
It is.
We are.
I'm the chief whip. I'm saying, fall in line, don't catch it. This wave's yours, this wave's yours.
Yeah.
Insists on your right to be called chief.
But it is a counterculture sport, though, isn't it? Come on, Dave. It's about punk rock and sleeping rough, isn't it? Big Wednesday, Dogtown, not the pinstripes and the 1922ers, isn't it?
Well, yeah, but it doesn't have to be. It's not like that now, though, is it? Let's be honest about it. We were all a bit like that 30 years ago.
Right, yeah.
Have you been out there? Of course you have.
Do you know what?
You're as likely to see grey hair as blonde hair out there at the moment in Porthcawl. And there are people I've been going out with for 30 years, and they were older than me 30 years ago. They're pensioners.
Do you know what?
I
had an eye-opening experience the other day. My daughter's friendly with a girl whose father's a member of the Royal Porthcawl Golf Club, and I've only ever been in there once to caddy, once to watch a tournament, right? And I went in. We were meeting to take the girls surfing, and I went, there's a whole scene that changes in the car park of the Royal Porthcawl. They're all members of the Royal Porthcawl. There's all the 4x4s and all that. And I was thinking to myself, gosh, but
we're doing the new golf, basically.
But I sound conservative, or small c conservative now in the way I'm talking about the sport, don't I? But
you don't have to live up to stereotypes. I mean, if you enjoy surfing, you enjoy it. I'm not going to go and pretend I'm to be something I'm not. I'm a Tory MP, for God's sake. All right, I'm not in a suit now, but I wouldn't worry about wearing a suit if I needed to.
Great stuff, Dave. I think we're gonna go to an important word from one of our sponsors while we move the chairs around to get Mack in a socially distanced manner. See you in a few seconds, listeners. Don't press that +30 button.
Here at No Limit Wetsuits, a reputable company with 30 years experience, we use the best neoprene on the planet. Guaranteed perfect fit, full aftercare service should you need it. So whether you're from North Wales, West Wales, Pembrokeshire or the rest of the UK, feel free to call me or check out nolimitwetsuits.co.uk. Greg Owen, Welsh surfing champ, 8 times.
Thank you for that. Yeah, so we've now substituted Producer Dodd out of the third chair here, and we're now joined by Mack, who's a member of the Bridgend Youth Council and a local grommet. You'll see him in the lineup here as well. So this could be you in a couple of decades' time, Mack.
Definitely.
Well, out there on a mini Mel. Getting in everyone's way.
Yeah.
So where are you from then, Mac?
Just Porthcawl. I go to school literally here. You can see the fields.
That's the location of the Crest Garden Studios. A secret. It's a secret location. People have been trying to find it, like the night garden. They can't.
Sorry
Go
about
on.
that.
Right. Okay. Yeah. You were telling Dave. Yeah.
Yeah, Portugal. I lived in Australia for a while, but
Oh, did you? Whereabouts?
The Gold Coast.
Oh, whereabouts?
Burley Heads.
Yeah, I was lived in Surfers Paradise for a little spell.
I do know my way around surfers.
Yeah. I know my way around the nightclubs as surfers. I'm not trying to find anything else there.
Can't say I particularly do as I was 12 when we lived there, but yeah, I do know Burley Heads sort of area quite well.
Brilliant.
Right, now, Mack, that's it. You've officially got the job, right? You're now our political editor. Laura Kuenssberg had offered to jump ship, Dave, when the role was announced, but when producer Dodd ran over her CV, he wasn't happy with the surfing credentials. Plus, she's got a podcast already, and we don't need cast-offs from other shows, do we?
Absolutely not.
You happy with that? Mind you,
Sounds perfect to me.
I don't know if you're impartial, though, are you? Because, on Bridgend Youth Council, you've got this stage in your life, you've kind of got an idea where you think you lie in politics, haven't you?
Yeah, probably not, but I'll try my best.
Yeah, okay. Do you mind telling us? Have you done your
Not at
political
all.
compass? Where do you sit?
I personally am right-leaning.
Right-leaning?
Yeah,
Dave
Sure you love that.
Fist pump.
Oh, goodness me, and producer Dodd's got his head in his hands. There we go.
I'm going to go back to the corner and read my copy of Red.
So we've been asking around to try and find out some of the issues that we think are really important to surfers. We just talked about foreign aid, and we were talking about El Salvador just before you got here, Mack. There's probably no prizes for guessing what the most important political issue to all surfers is, but do you want to take a punt, Dave, at what you think?
Well,
about
the
it?
environment, I would imagine.
You're exactly right. Yeah. And to that end, we're now going to listen to a question that has been sent in to us from Elliot Dudley, who finished runner-up to Mack in applying for the post of Crest's political editor.
Good evening, David. My name is Elliot Dudley, a representative for Surfers Against Sewage in South Wales for over 10 years and also a fellow alumni of Baysleigh Comprehensive School. Previously, you have expressed some scepticism about climate change. However, many, including myself, would argue that climate change will have a huge effect on our oceans, waves, and coastal communities. What is your government doing to safeguard our waves and our oceans?
Brilliant question. A lot. We're doing a lot. We've decided that Britain is going to be zero carbon neutral by 2050. We're moving towards electric cars very quickly. We're supporting all sorts of renewable energy within Wales. We're looking at the Pembrokeshire dock is going to be a centre hopefully for floating offshore wind. So that's going to be the next stage of developing wind power. We've got a hydrogen hub that has just been announced in North Wales in Anglesey. We're looking there at a project to develop a seabed off the coast of Anglesey that will enable marine power development companies to come in and test prototypes. We've actually got a hydrogen car that's been manufactured in mid-Wales, and we've got a huge number of projects going on to ensure that Britain's carbon neutral by 2050, and they're costing a lot of money, and we're putting that money into it.
How would you like that for an answer there, Mack?
I think that's a pretty perfect answer, actually. I think showing that this government is trying to put forward an agenda where they're actually planning to make these improvements.
You meant to challenge him now. That was the political editor.
Oh.
Mack.
Well,
You was Laura Kuenssberg.
Hang on. He's doing a great job here. I think Mack is a man.
well, is this enough? Because lots of political activists and environmentalists believe that what this government has put forward isn't enough, because the climate problem is such a huge what's the word I'm looking for there?
Problem.
Yeah, exactly.
It's pressing, yeah.
And is what's being put forward enough?
Well, I think it is. It's enough to get us there by 2050, and we're being shadowed by the Climate Change Commission, who are keeping an eye on our progress. We've also got to be realistic about what we can achieve.
Is the Climate Change Commission apolitical, like a civil service body?
Well, they've been quite critical of the government in the past. It's run by, I forget his name. He is a former Conservative MP. Forgive me, I've forgotten his name. Right. It will come to me in a moment. I'm having a mind blank moment, but he's very well known. And they've been very critical of the government on many issues. But we're being chased by them, and we can do it by 2050. Now, I know that a lot of environmentalists will say it's not fast enough. I accept that. but we have to do what's realistic, what we can achieve. We can't turn around tomorrow and tell everyone that you've got to stop driving petrol and diesel cars tomorrow. We can't do it.
Yeah.
You've got Climate Extinction who are sort of saying they want all of this to stop, nobody ever to fly again. We can't do that. We will have to take the public with us, a majority of the public with us, and the majority of the public will come on the timescale that we're suggesting.
And talking timescales, right? An election term is 5 years, or it might end up being slightly shorter. There's rumours of one even at some point this year.
Oh, no.
Oh, you've got it there, Crest.
Scott's that
Davis
one.
denied it.
No, definitely.
When a Tory politician tells you there's not going to be an election.
I could be eating my hat, but I very much doubt that.
So, isn't part of the problem that some of these targets are so far off that you can say it, sound popular, win an election, and then miss them, as quite a few of the government's 2020 targets went that way, didn't they?
The point is, though, you've got to be going step by step towards them, and we are doing. I mean, you look just in the last year alone, I've seen the Pembroke Dock Marine announcement, we've had the hydrogen hub up in North Wales now. I don't want to run over them all again, but this is just in Wales, right? Yeah. HS2 is a good example of actually a project that is meant to bring about carbon neutrality. It's getting people off the roads and into trains. So I think the environmentalists should be a bit more supportive. And some of them are just not realistic. I mean, they need to, if you believe that the carbon dioxide is the biggest threat to this planet, right, then you should be supporting anything that reduces carbon dioxide emissions. So you want to be supporting nuclear power because that will give the electricity and the amounts and with the predictability that we need. People need to be supportive of new railways, getting people out of cars and giving them the option to go by train.
Okay.
So there are things out there that some environmentalists don't like, but they need to support.
On that note, James Lovelock, Nobel Prize winning scientist,
he's a good man.
Author of the Gaia Hypothesis, a book I loved, did say that he would be prepared to take
in his back garden.
Nuclear waste in his back garden to prove that it was safe. I did find that interesting. Mack's looking like he's going to say something there.
So, what are your views about anthropogenic climate change, and if they have evolved since 2013?
I think if you look at every speech I've made on climate change in Parliament, I've always begun by making a couple of points. Number one, climate change is happening. Number two, CO2 is a cause of global warming. Number three, since the Industrial Revolution, there's been more CO2 in the atmosphere than there was previously, well, certainly for several thousand years. And so number four, it follows ineluctably that CO2 is having an impact on climate change. Now, I've made that point. I deliberately make that point at the start of every speech I've made about climate change. And I would challenge anyone like your listener there to say to me, like, what is it I have ever said that is factually incorrect? I live in hope that somebody can come up and say that. Those four comments I've made at the start of every speech, and I've raised questions about it. It's not my role to do that now, and certainly not today. I support the government entirely in its policies. Okay. And in fact, my job is to encourage other Conservative MPs to do likewise.
To go that way, great. Now, Mack, you did say, I know we've given you the role of political editor, which maybe it was a bit of a soft thing for us to do, because I'd thought initially, he's leaning right, he's going to be really nice. So he promised his questions were going to be really nice there, Dave. So that was a bit of a humdinger there, Mack. But now Mack has got another question ready for you, which I'm told is really kind and warm and amiable.
So, as a staunch Brexiteer, how do you think Brexit may affect travel for service to the EU? Because as early as 2023, British people will have to complete an ETIAS application to the EU, which for some may lead to rejection of entry. So with an increase in anti-British sentiment in Brussels, which may result in further restrictions, do you think Brexit will result in it being increasingly difficult for service to travel to the EU long term?
Jeepers, Mack! Jeepers! He's on the floor, there's nothing left of him!
Can't be too kind.
Okay, I will recover myself and say that let's look at what we've already seen so far. The European Union decided that its policy was going to be that countries from outside the EU shouldn't be able to travel into the EU at all because of COVID.
Yeah.
And Portugal was very happy to go totally against that rule when they realised that they might be on the green list. And they actually went against the European Commission ruling on it and said, we're ignoring that because we're desperate to have British tourists in. If the European Union might want to be difficult about it, but the reality is that European states want British investment and they want British tourists. And we've already seen that individually they're quite willing to go against the European Commission in order to make sure that the tourist pounds keep rolling in.
But is that that's not a definite thing? That can't be for
definite.
sure, really.
Nothing's definite in life. I mean, we can't stop individual nations anywhere in the world from stopping us from going there. But I don't see any reason why they would. And in fact, what we've seen suggests quite the opposite, that they're very keen to have us go there.
It's less stopping people getting people in, but more making it more difficult, which distracts people from wanting to go to those countries.
Well, they don't want to make it difficult. We may have to fill in a form, of course. I mean, you have to fill in forms and visas to go to a lot of places, but I don't know whether you will. But they won't want to make it difficult, because all of the evidence suggests that we've seen so far suggests they actually want to make it easy. Look at what Portugal did. They immediately went against the European Commission, to ensure that British tourists could get into Portugal with a minimal amount of fuss, because they wanted British tourists and British tourist pounds. A lot of jobs depend on that. So why would they stop that happening? Why would they throw their own people out of work? I don't think it's going to happen.
Can I ask you? Okay, great stuff, guys. Can I ask about Welshness and Welsh national identity, Dave? Because Logan, who you met earlier, works up at the surf school alongside Mack's brother. Has previously been to the ISA Worlds, a situation when Wales was a country that it's seen as a country in its own right by the ISA. Now, in order to get Olympic recognition, which is great because surfing's in the Olympics this summer, England, Scotland, Wales and Northern Ireland have now got to go back underneath a GB umbrella, which meant that only one surfer, Harry Cromwell, went to El Salvador this year, along with 5 English surfers. So Logan, surely within the context of surfing, would have had more opportunities if Wales is a nation on the world stage, because he doesn't have to be English surfers, and who've got the governing bodies, on their doorstep, the industry on their doorstep. So he's had to jump an extra hurdle this year to go to Thurso, narrowly missed out on a spot. What are your thoughts on that?
I mean, I'm sorry for Logan, who I know a bit. I get the point, but the answer is, well, do we want Welsh independence in order to ensure that
Logan can go into a contest? He probably would.
I mean, yes, I accept that, and he probably would, and I'd see his point, but it's quite a big price to pay. I mean, I think really what we're going to do is look more at sporting bodies generally, and I'll say this on the record, right, for your podcast. I've had in the past dealings with various two sporting bodies in Wales. And they've been less than satisfactory on a number of fronts. Not the surfing one, but with 2 major sports in Wales.
Okay.
I mean, one has been in the papers recently. Look at the Football Association Wales at the moment.
Yeah.
They make a decision that a top women's team in Abergavenny in the Premier League that's drawn against a team that's at the top of the Women's Premier League. They're not going to be in the Premier League next year because of the PowerPoint presentation, right? So I think let's look at the way in which some of these sporting organisations are run within Wales. I can think of another one as well, which with some equally bad examples, and maybe look at that rather than, it's a bit drastic to say let's have an independent Wales so that we can have somebody in the surfing Olympics.
Right, now to the really important questions. Producer Dodd has set up a bit of fun for us here.
I have.
Back in the chair.
I have. So this last part of the show, we're going to abandon Crestian time, and we're going to get more Have I Got News for You?
Oh dear.
So we're going to play If They Surfed, What Type of Surfer Would They Be? So first up, I thought the most obvious example, we know exactly what type of surfer this person's going to be. What type of surfer would Farage be?
Farage.
I think Farage would be dropping in on everyone.
Yeah, that aggro local that says don't surf my beach.
Yeah, he'd be doing that actually. He'd be doing that, but on a huge Malibu.
Citizenship test before you come on the lineup.
In fact, he'd be one of those goat boaters. Do you remember them from the...
I do remember them, yeah.
Fair enough. Right, well, let's think around. What about Keir Starmer? What sort of surfer would he be?
I think Keir Starmer would be a careful surfer. He'd be walking out to about waist high and just turning around and
getting a bit
coming in,
water.
but not taking any risks.
Is this a bit of a cheap shot? Can I say, I don't know what sort of surfer he'd be, because I don't know what sort of person he is. Or is that... No, sorry, I shouldn't say that, should I?
Yeah, whatever, I don't mind. Right, I think we're another one, Tom. Let's go for the
head honcho then.
Yeah, well,
Johnson.
No, I'm going to get the sack though. I think Boris would be. Boris would obviously have a large foamy, and would give it a good go, but perhaps run over.
Yeah, Boris would be ploughing over children.
Ploughing over people, not children though, but you could see.
Mind you, there was that little kid in the Japanese rugby game.
Boris
it would be all right. It would be all right. He would get up though. I'm convinced Boris would get up and ride the waves.
Right.
Definitely.
In the name of fairness, though, if we're calling in Boris, we have to call all the others by their first names as well. Because I've always found that interesting how he's managed to get a first name.
Tony got Tony Blair.
Tony,
didn't he?
yeah, I suppose he did. Yeah, okay, all right.
Maggie from Margaret Thatcher.
Maggie did.
And that wasn't always said in the nicest way. Had a certain ring to it sometimes.
Okay, well these are all the ones that win elections then. So that's it. You've got to get a first name. You've got to get on first name terms with the media to win elections. Anyway, sorry, we got right. Who are we going to try next, Dodd?
Let's go for David Cameron.
I think David Cameron.
He's a bodyboarder.
Over there.
It's in all the papers all the time.
He's beneath contempt. Then.
Well, let's try some of the other leaders. Nicola Sturgeon, what kind of surfer would she be? Oh, he's having a good think.
I'm having to think about this one. She'd be.
I think she'd be pretty good.
I think she'd probably have a board like mine, which makes you look a bit better than you actually are.
Oh dear.
Sort of a trimmed down mini.
Oh, the nationalists again here. What about Adam Price then?
They're all going to go off Googling now to find out what this actually means.
What about Adam Price?
Oh, Adam! I think Adam would be quite a good surfer. Actually, he'd probably be out there on a reasonable sized shortboard, getting a few waves. I think Adam would be all right.
A bit of a whippersnapper as well, I reckon. I don't know. Okay.
Don't know.
Gove.
Oh,
Gove is a very polite man, so he'd probably be out there with a shortboard, not getting any waves at all, and too polite to try and paddle for anything.
He'd be going down the point on the rip, wouldn't he?
Sunak. Richie Sunak.
Richie would be.
Richie
Richie will have. I've had a few meetings with him. Frighteningly clever guy. He's a sort of person that would have done the Rubik's Cube in 6 seconds. So he would have gone off and calculated to the absolute centiliter.
The Tom Curran thing and paddle around the
how many how many litres it's going to be and what the nose is going to look like. He will have a custom-made board.
I imagine Sunak in a very, very expensive wetsuit that looks really good on him.
Got to balance the genders out here. What about Priti Patel? What would she be like surfing?
She would be heading across the channel to stop anyone getting off the beach in France.
Great stuff. Thanks for being a sport with that, Dave.
Pleasure.
We always like to try something new when we got this type. When we got a new type of guest.
I'll probably be back next week up here. Whether I've got a job in London is another matter after this, but still.
Now we're back on the usual territory to finish off. Surf travel nightmares. We'll be running these. Do you have a surf travel nightmare apart from the time you went to Porthcawl to go on Crest podcast in the Garden Studio?
No, I think it wasn't a nightmare, but I think I mentioned it earlier on. I got very ill in Sri Lanka.
Right. Okay.
And I came back for the warm beer, the friends. The surfing at Porthcawl, and I suddenly realised this wasn't a nightmare. This was absolutely right. You can spend all your life looking at those magazines and thinking about that. Well, I mean, you've experienced them.
Yeah.
But actually, there's something about this place, isn't there?
There is.
We don't know what's on. We don't appreciate what's on our own doorstep. We've got all these wonderful spots here, and let's be honest, even when it's blown out at rest, we can always go around to Coney and with a Malibu and get something. So appreciate what you've got. That's my bit of philosophy in life.
Brilliant.
Amazing, Dave, well, thanks very much for coming on.
Now,
who knows, anyway, because we did the surf travel nightmares to try and put ourselves off wanting to travel and getting that wanderlust. We may be only a few good pieces of news away from some serious travel prospects. Anyway, we're always keen to hear guest thoughts on the stories they hear, or indeed any of the issues discussed today. I think Mack and Dave are going to have a lengthy discussion in the bottom end of the garden now by the sound of things. As always, our email is castcrest@gmail.com. You can also contact us through Instagram and Twitter. If you've enjoyed our chat with the Honourable David TC Davies today and want to hear more, then I can draw you to our extensive back issue and also ask that you kindly subscribe to us on one of the many platforms from which our episodes can be downloaded. Chief ones tend to be Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Podcasts or YouTube. We'd also be stoked if you left a review too. In the meantime, thanks again for listening to this one. Thanks, Dave, too, for being on it.
Pleasure.
In a fortnight's time, all being well, we will be just days out from surfing's Olympic debut, and as a result, we're going to be doing an Olympics special with some great guests. There might not be a Welsh rider on this occasion, but we found plenty of Wales relevant angles, and the greatest sport on earth will be getting ready to join the greatest festival on earth. We can't wait. In the meantime, thanks for listening and see you all again. Diolch am gwrando a gwelwch chi tro nesa.
Goodbye, everybody.
And Mac.
Goodbye.